My name is Kyle Marquis. I've written 7 or 8 choice of games stories at this point, starting with my Flying Ace adventure, Empyrean. My big breakout was with Night Road, the Vampire the Masquerade game that was just unbelievably successful a couple of years ago. And I'm chasing that high again. I don't know if I'll get it with Book of Hungry Names, my Werewolf the Apocalypse game. Most of my work is done through interactive fiction. I started playing text adventures like Zork at a very, very young age, and I've been playing World of Darkness games since high school, which is a long time ago for me now. Vampire people have a very clear idea of what they want. Many of them have a character that they've been playing since, like 1990, and they want that character to be represented. I think that there's a lot of openness in the werewolf community I've seen, in Werewolf the Apocalypse. There are a lot of people who are willing to just take it as it comes, but it also means that you don't have that ride or die cadre of people who just love anything with the vampire in it. So creatively, as someone who's putting together a werewolf story, you really need to sell them on what's going on. I really worked hard to get in there with what makes Werewolf the Apocalypse a werewolf story that isn't just like Werewolf movie, where the whole plot of the movie is, you get bit and then you have that really cool transformation scene that blows through most of the budget, and then you get shot with a silver bullet, and there's some tragedy in the middle. It's a very powerless story. So with Werewolf, the trick is to give the player power, agency, and a direction. And Werewolf the Apocalypse really does that because you're fighting the apocalypse. But my real work with Book of Hungry Names is figuring out how, these 5 werewolves in particular fight the apocalypse. I sort of told myself when Night Road did very well that if I ever get the Mage the Ascension license, I will break the 1,000,000-word mark. I will do it for a Mage game because Mage is so complex. And I blew past 1,000,000 words months ago on a Werewolf. It was mostly adding the gifts, since Werewolf, the tabletop game, wasn't done when I started writing. But when I started writing Book of Hungry Names, the shared Werewolf document for World of Darkness was 5 pages, and it had things like maybe make Rage a tracker, change some of the names. There was nothing there when I started. And every single time I saw the document expanded, I'd see 2 or 3 things like, oh, that's cool, I gotta put it in the game. And in it went. And then when it reached 100 pages, there goes, 5 or 6 more cool things I've got to put in my game. And it kept ballooning. The real size is with the gifts. There are about, just for those of you coming in and you don't know anything about Werewolf the Apocalypse, gifts are your supernatural powers as a werewolf that aren't about shape-shifting. They're given to you by spirits, and the Werewolf 5th edition book probably has around 50 to 100 gifts. It's a lot. I ended up with about 25, and with most of them, I had to integrate them one at a time by hand, lovingly handcrafted by master artisans, me. And it took a lot of space and a lot of time. I think the results are really good. It really makes you, you don't want to take a power or an item or an ability in a game and then never see it. You see these a lot. It takes a lot of writing and gives the game a lot of size. Book of Hungry Names is a little more technically complex than Night Road, but for anyone who played Night Road, you're going to recognize, there are stats and skills with dots. The mechanical underpinnings look very much like Night Road. It's actually a little streamlined, a little more efficient compared to Night Road, which I'm proud of. But man, those gifts, those gifts take up a lot of space. A couple of years ago, there was a cairn, which is a site of supernatural power used by werewolves, called Broadbrook. And werewolves are scattered all over the world, fighting against the forces of the apocalypse, the forces of a spiritual demon king, you can say, called the Worm, which wants to destroy the world. It's a very simple concept to start with, but then you get into the politics of the werewolves, which are very complex, very ugly and fractious. Amidst all this general collapse of the werewolf nation, Broadbrook was really holding strong. It It was militarily strong. It fought the agents of the worm. It had great allies and humans. It had political authority and respect. Then suddenly, 3 years ago, it completely collapsed. Went from about 45 werewolves all across what's in our world's western Massachusetts in the United States to a handful of survivors. Everyone's dead. The spirits are destroyed or corrupted. Nothing remains. So the question becomes, what the hell happened? You are selected by your pack to go to what is sort of a spiritual nuclear waste zone and figure out what happened. And if I were going to sell the elevator pitch, I think the interesting thing about Book of Hungry Names is that, like with all the World of Darkness games, it takes place in the modern world. You're moving through a small New England liberal arts town. So to everyone else, it seems very pleasant. It seems like a nice little town. But you are moving through what is basically a spiritually post-apocalyptic environment. The spirits are dead or warped. All the werewolf guardians are destroyed. Monsters are spreading in the shadows, and you need to figure out what happened. First, you don't get cool cars in this one. I'm really sorry. It's just not a good driving environment. The roads are really narrow, and there are too many woods. What I wanted with this one was to give you the chance to rebuild the land. And I was inspired by an old PlayStation 2 game called Okami, which is a game where you play a divine wolf restoring different little nodes of land. And that's Okami was an action game, sort of Zelda-like, and obviously I don't get any graphics. But what I wanted was to give you the opportunity to find these lost werewolves who are, destroyed and spiritually beaten down after this disaster. Sort of get them back where they belong. So you have a member of the Bone Gnawer tribe, and he, you can put him in a slum in town and let it turn into, a beautiful intersection of humanity and the natural world. You can find a child of Gaia, drop her in the woods, and it turns from being, a demon-haunted bog into a beautiful forest. And in each of those areas, you can slowly restore it, return it to its natural glory. More importantly, that's where your gifts come from. So you restore these lands, you contact the spirits who survived this apocalypse, and you negotiate with them for gifts in order to expand your territory. So in a sense, it's not a 4X game like Civilization or Master of Orion, but it is a game where you claim territory and you slowly rebuild it. Well, first, you can kick a lot of ass in this game, and it was really satisfying to write that. It was nice. I was sort of writing these horrible, gruesome scenes. I'm sort of wondering, is anyone in World of Darkness High Command going to have a problem with this? They're like, no, that's cool. You can write about intestines all you want, Kyle. And so, yeah, there is a lot of action. There's a lot of, going into factories and just beating the crap out of mercenary soldiers and then killing a giant demon at the end. There's plenty of that. But when I was looking at the newer werewolf games that exist, in the World of Darkness rules, you kind of divide things up into physical, mental, and social abilities. And I played Earthblood, which is a Rock'em Sock'em actioner, and it's very physical. Heart of the Forest, which is sort of a graphic adventure, is very much about your connections to these other wolves and sort of figuring out who you are as a werewolf. It's very social. I found myself thinking, I want a game where a wolf solves mysteries. When I was younger, I played a lot of Call of Cthulhu, which is, the Lovecraftian mystery-solving RPG. And I found myself thinking, I'd like to see if I could get some of that vibe of solving mysteries and figuring out what happened. But, if things go wrong, instead of instantly dying to a tentacle like a Call of Cthulhu protagonist, you can just turn into a giant werewolf and you can fight back. But it's very much a game about figuring out what happened and then rebuilding after this disaster. You do have 4 core pack members that you eventually recover, but one of my favorite characters is actually the Glasswalker, Daphne Clear. She's not one of the main characters, so you can recruit her if you play your cards right. And I think she's really interesting because she's older than you. You're a fairly young werewolf. Everyone here is fairly young. Daphne's in her 40s. She's been doing this for a while. She's got a kid who's your age. And it was really fun to write her complicated relationship to technology, and to the idea that, like, all right, we all know that in both the world of darkness and in the real world, environmentally speaking, we're in a lot of trouble. And that's something the Werewolf tackles head on. No, it always has. It's always been about an environmental apocalypse. So it was really fun to get in Daphne's head as someone who honestly isn't really committed to fixing the problems with the urgency that you want. She's older, she's rich, she's not like super rich, but she's got a nice electric car. She runs an environmental consultancy company. Hasn't she done enough? And so you have this difficult situation with Daphne where, like, she's not like a bad guy. She's not a Fomor or some kind of demonic Bane, but man, she sucks. She's like just really difficult to work with. So she was a really fun character to write. I also liked the chance of writing some of your little helpers, your human helpers who also survived this disaster. In earlier versions of World of Darkness, you had wolf-blooded people called kinfolk. And I think W5 was very right to get away from the breeding aspects of Werewolf. But when I first started writing this game, I had the idea of human helpers in mind. They show up in Earthblood to teach you and sort of explain what's going on. So I decided, I'll have these 3 human helpers who train your skills, because that's something I wanted to expand from Night Road. In Night Road, it's very perfunctory. You get some XP, you spend them on skills. I really enjoyed writing the human helpers, specifically Roscoe. Roscoe is a band promoter. If Night Road was about cars, to a large extent, Book of Hungry Names is about music. It's very much about a local music scene in sort of the backwoods of New England. If you've ever seen Green Room, that's the vibe I was going for. And Roscoe, he's this old Vietnamese dude. He's seen every horrible thing in the world. He knows about werewolves. He helps them out. He doesn't know what to do about this apocalypse, but he's always got your back. And one of the fun things about Roscoe is that you sort of slowly realize that this guy's for real. He has seen all sorts of horrible stuff. He's a survivor, and he doesn't talk about it. He's very humble. But you sort of realize, oh man, this guy's a huge badass. And that was fun to write. The third character I'd like to talk about is unfortunately dead by the time the story starts. It's Catherine, who is a Shadow Lord Thurge, so a werewolf occultist. And her death fuels one of the characters you also meet, Elton, who joins your pack. He's also a Shadow Lord occultist. And Catherine is this sort of shadow through the entire game because she knew they were going to lose, and she made all these desperate plans to stop the Black Spiral Dancer, the fallen werewolf that was going to wipe them out. And so slowly, as you uncover clues about what happened, you also uncover clues about what Catherine was planning this whole time. So you're always sort of operating in her shadow and trying to second guess her and figure out what she was doing. Because even though she was opposed to the Black Spiral Dancer and to this disastrous apocalypse, she obviously had her own agenda, and you don't know if you want to exactly follow along with her plans for the Cairn and the pack. When I first started writing for Choice of Games, my sort of baseline assumption for what I was trying to do were the BioWare games. So, and KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, was very much in my mind. And, so I'm always sort of picturing, Commander Shepard at the Citadel, or some of the Baldur's Gate material as I write these. And the original Baldur's Gate had some of the first, cool, fully developed romances. They were kind of creepy in retrospect, but that's always been what's inspired me. First, you can date. You got 5 dateables. Just to make that clear, you've got 5 potentially dateable characters, 4 romances for the werewolves in your pack, and 1 human journalist. I'm worried that the drawing for Daphne Clear the Glasswalker is so hot that I'm going to have to write a romance for her too, even though she's like twice your character's age. We have this wonderful artist, Amy Wilkins, for the portraits, and man, Daphne Clear's a good-looking woman. So I approach it thinking that first, the Choice of Games players, the people who come to this from the Choice of Games, they love romance. And every time, even after I finish the game, there's like, oh, can we have more dates? Can we have romance? Can we have just a couple more dates? The last thing I was writing, like 24 hours ago, tired as can be, completely burned out. I'm banging out more little dates. I'm tapping away on just a couple more dates because it's so important to have, I guess you can't say a human connection, but a personal connection to these characters. And also, for me at least, I'm not a huge fan of writing sex scenes. It's just too damn funny. I do it because I love my readers, and I want them to be happy. But for me at least, the thing I really enjoy about writing romances is that even if you don't like go all the way, you get to. This is a great way to meet these characters, to interact with them, to get their points of view, because especially for Werewolf, where you're dealing with real world politics, and like even more than Vampire, you're talking about real world politics, about environmentalism, about policing. You know, I have like the narrator voice where I just sort of try to describe what's happening. But one of the important things about a game, especially a game this big, is getting the point of view of all these characters. You can take them on all sorts of cute little dates. I promise my readers there are many cute little dates. But you can also ask them about, like, you know, what are we doing about, you know, these apartment complexes that are being built by corrupt developers? Like, do we just go in there and you know, kill some developers? Is that? And you get to hear their opinions, ranging from, like, you know, bloodthirsty badness to like, well, no, I'm not gonna just murder random humans, to the party's communists saying, well, if they're union, we have to let them go. You get that as you dance, as you go out to little dinner dates. It's really nice to be able to have a normal date. Because, like, in Night Road, like, you're vampires, you're blood-drinking monsters. So you're not having normal sex, and you're not going out to dinner. You're not having any kind of normal relationship. And in Night Road, people love the romances in Night Road, but, like, it was very weird to write them. They're so cold. Like, everyone here is like a real monster. Whereas for Werewolf, you know, you have people who, despite being monsters, you know, they spent the first 20 years of their lives, you know, living in the same crummy apartments that they're thinking about knocking down now. So these romances are an opportunity to explore how much of you is still human. And so that's been a lot of fun. Tribes that we start with are the tribes of the werewolves you meet. So you've got Shadow Lords, Silverfangs, Children of Gaia, Onars, and Glasswalkers. And that's a great, if you've never played Werewolf the Apocalypse before, that means nothing to you, and I apologize, but they're very cool. And I'm sure the people who have played it are excited. That's a good range of tribes. The first DLC adds Black Furies, because you also get to meet a Black Fury character, even if she doesn't end up joining your pack. And the Heart Wardens, who are sort of guardians of nature, and I really like them. I like how they've been developed for the new edition of Werewolf. And you also get some extra material with all these. There are all these human occultists kind of skulking around the outskirts of your werewolf world, like trying to steal power, and always getting into trouble because, you know, they think they're like summoning demons or summoning spirits, and they have the entirely wrong framework for what is actually happening with these banes and with these spiritual entities they're messing around with. And that gets expanded in the DLC, because I love human occultists. I love these scummy occultists that are always sniffing around your territory and causing trouble. So that gets expanded in the DLC in addition to the 2 new tribes. Assuming we do well, I would like to get all the remaining tribes out in probably 2 more expansion packs. We've got 4 tribes left. So probably 2 and 2. I'd also like to expand some of the gifts. I'd like to, right now, each moon sign, each auspice, and each tribe have 3 gifts. I'd like to have a DLC that expands it to 4. If people have already like dug around in the code in this game and they see gifts that exist but can't be purchased, and that's because like one of the really cool gifts in the 5th edition book is the Mark of Kali, which lets you scratch someone, and like gives off this spiritual stink that you can track, like this festering wound on them, and then you can smell it and track them down. And like this gift was so cool, I wanted to incorporate it. So, but I wrote like 3 or 4 versions of this, and I'm looking at this gift, like this gift is going to take 30,000 words. I don't have the time for this, so it got pushed off to the DLC. So I'm going to make a bunch more gifts for the DLC, probably 5 to 10. Also, by the time I release the first DLC, I want to have poly romances. Players love those, and they are so much work. Oh my god, I think it's more work programming a poly relationship than it is actually maintaining one in real life. It's an absolute nightmare. It's awful. It's so much work. Because it's just exponentially more complicated. I'm not going to gate that behind the DLC. But by the time the first DLC comes out, I should have some expanded romance options. Because again, I like with the Mark of Kali, I started with the poly options, and I'm like, oh no, I'm not doing this. This is too much work. So that's going to get pushed back a few months. But hopefully at least 2 DLCs, and hopefully at least one of them will, like with Night Road, also come with a complete adventure, like a complete mini mission to do. So that's the plan.